I work for the U.S. Forest Service, and what I'm about to share is from a notebook I stumbled upon while hiking in the backcountry. I'll warn you up front, this story isn't for the faint-hearted. My supervisor insisted I destroy the note to prevent anyone from trying to replicate what the victim wrote about. So, I'll say this, don't be foolish. If you're not ready for what nature can throw at you, stay out of the woods. The wilderness might seem like a nurturing guardian, but even the best mothers can't shield their kids from everything. If you're reading this, it means it found me. My fire's burning low, and I've run out of matches. It all began as an innocent trip, one meant to honor my dad. He passed away when I was just a teenager, but growing up, he was my hero. Hunting and fishing trips with him were some of my best memories. To keep his spirit alive, I planned a camping and hunting trip in his memory. What I didn't realize was that this time, I'd be the one being hunted. 3 weeks ago, I packed up my Labrador, Tucker, and headed out to Hiawatha National Forest, deep in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. It had been a while since I'd last hunted, so I burned through all my vacation days to make time. I made sure to grab Sub-Zero camping gear, check my muzzleloader rifle, and load up Tucker in my old 2005 Ford Escape. When we reached the campsite, the first snowflakes started falling. It was mid-December, right in the heart of muzzleloader season. The campsite was as remote as it gets, about 45 minutes off the nearest main road. The moment I let Tucker out to stretch his legs, he froze. Every single hair on him, from nose to tail, stood straight up. He sniffed the air, then started growling, his legs stiff as boards. Without a sound, he bolted back to the car and began whining like I'd never heard before. I figured he must have caught a scent of a bear or maybe a coyote. Tucker wasn't used to being this far into the wilderness, so I chalked it up to the unfamiliar smells. The first few days passed uneventfully. Tucker and I spent our time wandering the woods, soaking in the peace and quiet. Once, we spotted a raccoon perched in a tree, but it wanted nothing to do with us. It wasn't until the sun dipped below the horizon one evening that the strange occurrences began. I was out collecting firewood around twilight when I heard the first whistle. A sharp, unnatural sound that cut through the stillness. It immediately set me on edge, and Tucker felt it too. His ears flattened, and he stayed glued to my side as we made our way back to camp. A second whistle followed, this one closer. My heart started racing, and I picked up my pace. Tucker moved stiffly alongside me, his body tense. By the time the third whistle came, it felt like it was right behind me. The sound practically vibrated against the back of my neck. Adrenaline surged through me, and I broke into a sprint. I could see the faint outline of my campsite and I tripped over a hidden tree root. Pain shot up my leg like a lightning bolt, and I heard a sickening crack. I didn't need a doctor to tell me, I'd broken my ankle. When I finally dragged myself to camp, I saw my car. It looked like it had been ripped apart by a bear. The windows were shattered, and at least one tire was flat. I climbed into the driver's seat and tried to start it, but the engine wouldn't even crank. The bitter cold must have drained the battery or done a number on the electrical system. I realized then that I'd have to tough it out until morning. With any luck, I'd get the tire changed and find a way to limp back to civilization, even with my busted ankle. I managed to get a fire going and was roasting yet another hot dog while propped up nursing my ankle. The flames cast their comforting glow, flickering against the stark winter night. I'd cobbled together a rough splint to keep my ankle steady. Everything felt manageable, until Tucker's nose shot into the air. He was fixated just beyond the firelight, past where my wrecked car sat in the shadows. His growl started low, a sound deep in his chest. I'd heard him growl before, like when the delivery guy came to the porch. But this was entirely different. It was primal, raw, and full of warning, like he was channeling his wild ancestors. Suddenly, the fire didn't feel warm anymore. A biting chill crept over me. My hand instinctively went to the pistol I'd brought along for protection. Everything around us seemed to drain of color, like the forest itself was retreating into some hidden corner. That's when I heard it, a whistle. 3 distinct notes, moving low to high, then back to low. With the pistol gripped tightly, I forced myself to stand, leaning heavily on my good leg, and hobbled toward the sound. Part of me hoped it might be another camper, maybe a lost hiker who'd stumbled upon us. This area got pretty crowded in the summer months. But now, with the snow crunching underfoot and the bitter cold gnawing at my skin, it didn't feel like anyone else should be out here. I made it to the back of my car and stopped in my tracks. Prints, large, strange tracks, marked the snow. At first glance, they looked like massive dog prints, but the details were all wrong. The toes stretched too far from the pad, and they were webbed. The tracks led off toward the pond where I'd gathered water for the fire. I turned back toward camp. The fire was sputtering, its light dimming. Tucker was clawing frantically at the tent, trying to get inside. I knew right then, we were done for the night. Once inside, I fired up the kerosene heater and made sure Tucker was tucked under the blankets. I slid into my sleeping bag, keeping the pistol within arm's reach, and popped a couple of ibuprofen to dull the ache in my ankle. Tomorrow, I told myself, I'd reassess everything and figure out a way to leave. But the Whistler clearly had other plans. When daylight came, I limped out to take another look at the damage to my car, hoping maybe I'd underestimated it in the darkness. What I saw made my stomach sink. Every tire was slashed, the windows shattered, and the seats shredded beyond recognition. Wires dangled from the steering column like exposed nerves. Whatever had visited us in the night clearly didn't want me leaving anytime soon. I took stock of my supplies, praying I had enough to hold out. Most of my food was gone, stolen. The extra firewood I'd stored outside the tent vanished. All I had left was what was inside with me. At best, I could stretch my provisions for another night, maybe 2 if I rationed hard. But the nearest town was a 2-hour drive on a good day. With my busted ankle, there was no way I was walking out of here. That was 4 days ago, the first time I heard the Whistler. My ankle has swollen to the size of a grapefruit, and I can barely move. Every night since then, the Whistler has taunted me. Its haunting low-high-low whistle pierces the stillness, echoing through the trees. It crashes through the woods, snapping branches and hurling them toward the tent, always staying just out of reach. I've noticed it won't come closer than 20 feet. I think it's Tucker, something about his scent must keep it at bay. But I don't know how much longer I can hold out. I'm almost out of kerosene now. Tucker's breathing has gotten bad, real bad. Yesterday, he came back soaked to the bone from the direction of the pond. I'm terrified he fell through the ice. I should have kept a closer eye on him, but he bolted, and with my busted ankle, I couldn't catch him. Now, he's lying here, shivering and wheezing. I dressed him in one of my hoodies and a thermal vest to keep him warm. Under different circumstances, he'd look adorable. But right now, all I can think about is how helpless he seems. The temperature keeps dropping. Last night, it hit -7 degrees Fahrenheit. I've got maybe 3 cups of kerosene left, if that. It's been a week since the Whistler started tormenting us. Tucker's breathing has only gotten worse. He doesn't get up anymore. He can't even go outside to do his business. When he has an accident in the tent, he looks at me with those sad, apologetic eyes, like he knows he's letting me down. But I'm not mad at him, not one bit. All I want is for him to be okay, for him to not suffer anymore. My cell phone died days ago. Not that it mattered, there's no service this deep in the woods. I had a satellite phone, but it's gone now. I'm sure the Whistler took it. It's smart enough to know how to cut me off completely. I've been trying to reinforce the tent with what little strength I have left. I built a crude frame of sticks and logs around it, packing snow and layering pine branches for insulation. I think I saw someone do that on Man vs. Wild once. Maybe it's helping. But the Whistler's tracks are closing in, forming a wide circle about 15 feet from the tent. The kerosene's gone now. Tucker and I huddle together for warmth. Every so often, I strike a match, just to feel a fleeting touch of heat. My toes are numb, my nose is purple, and my fingers are so stiff it's hard to write. My tears have frozen to my face, and my breath has turned my beard into a block of ice. The pain in my ankle has been replaced by a dull, throbbing numbness. This morning, I woke up to find Tucker had passed in his sleep. His breathing last night sounded like crinkling paper. I knew it was coming, but still, it broke me. I'm not proud of what I did next. I cut him open, hoping to find some warmth inside, like in that scene from Star Wars. But that was a lie. There was no warmth. Only cold, slick entrails. I'm so sorry, Tucker. I'm just so hungry. I checked my feet today. They're a horrifying shade of black and purple. My nose doesn't feel cold anymore, not that I think it matters now. Even with every piece of clothing I own piled on, the cold pierces me like needles. The thermometer reads -20 degrees Fahrenheit. It feels like my entire body is screaming for heat. The Whistler is just outside the tent now. His low high-low whistle drills into my ears, relentless and mocking. I can't take it anymore. Tomorrow, I'm going to try and hike out. Forget my ankle. I'm dead either way if I stay here. That was a mistake. I didn't make it far before I realized I was walking in circles, favoring my good leg and turning myself around without realizing it. On my final attempt, I stumbled onto the frozen pond. The ice cracked under my weight, plunging my legs into the freezing water. The shock of it was like knives stabbing into my skin. Somehow, I managed to crawl back to the tent. Desperation drove me to strip off every piece of clothing I wasn't wearing and set it on fire. For a brief, fleeting moment, I felt warmth. It was glorious. The Whistler's here now. I see him standing outside, his jaws open wide. That haunting low high-low whistle escapes from deep within his massive, fur-covered body. He looks warm, so unbelievably warm. I can't stop staring at him, craving his embrace, his heat. This will be my last entry. He's so close now, and I'm so cold. I can feel his hunger, it matches my own. Maybe I shouldn't have written this. Maybe my boss was right. If you're reading this, take my advice, don't go into the woods alone, especially in winter. And above all else, stay warm.